General Committee meeting. Thursday, July 6, 2023 to order. This committee meeting is being convened by electronic means as authorized under Part 14 of the Procedure Bylaw. As such, committee members may participate in person or by electronic means. If any committee member loses connection during the voting process, we have staff on hand to facilitate getting you back online quickly while we suspend the voting process. The contact information has been circulated to you. Members of the public can view the proceedings via the live stream and YouTube link, which have been tweeted out by the @VanCityClerk account. Video of committee members speaking, presentations, amendments, and vote results will be projected to viewers when available. Committee members are reminded to please enable their video to ensure quorum is maintained during the meeting under Section 14.13 of the Procedure Bylaw if attending virtually. External members of the committee can access the speaking queue by clicking the raise hand icon on WebEx or raise your hand. This seems like a good time to introduce our newly appointed external liaison, Carol Bellringer. Carol, welcome, and I'd like to ask the Auditor General, Mike, if you could give a brief introduction, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair. It gives me great pleasure to introduce, you hear me now? Introduce Carol Bellringer to the committee. Carol has a really lengthy and impressive resume. She served 2 terms as the Auditor General and Provincial Auditor for the province of Manitoba. She served as British Columbia's Auditor General. She has served on the boards of the International Federation of Accountants, the Auditing and Assurance Standards Board, and the Auditing and Assurance Standards Oversight Council, various national and international organizations. And she is the past president and CEO of the Canadian Audit and Accountability Foundation. We would be hard-pressed to find anybody more qualified to advise this committee, and I'm absolutely delighted to have the opportunity to work with Carol.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Moving on, just some housekeeping. In case of an emergency where we need to evacuate the building, I'd like to direct your attention to the exits. Over there, there are 2 exits beyond the glass door and to the left. If the glass doors are obstructed, please direct your attention to the 4 exits in this chamber, and please use the stairs, do not use the elevator. I'd also like to highlight that there is a defibrillator located at the end of the hallway outside of the council chamber. So we acknowledge that we're on the unceded territory, the Musqueam, the Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. We thank them for having cared for this land and look forward to working with them in partnership as we continue to build this great city together. I also want to take a moment to recognize the immense contributions of the City of Vancouver staff who work hard every day to make our city an incredible place to live, work, and play. Clerk, maybe we have a roll call, please.
Yes. Councillor Kirby-Young is absent. Councillor Dominato is absent. I understand both have metro meetings. Councillor Fry is in the chair. Councillor Boyle. Councillor Montague.
Present.
And Councillor Jo.
Present.
Archie Johnson, external representative. And Sophia Sui is absent today, and Carol Bellringer present. The Auditor General Committee has quorum, Chair Fry.
Thanks, Clerk. And so before we begin, I have some announcements. Any comments on the agenda can be sent to the committee using the web form on the city's website. The link to that form will be tweeted out on the @VanCityClerk account. I also want to note the City of Vancouver's longstanding commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, including utmost respect for all genders. I remind committee members that when addressing speakers and staff, we will avoid using gendered honorifics and will instead refer to that person by first and last name, role, or title. There's only one report on today's agenda, and I would like to remind committee members that if amendments are to be brought forward, they must be submitted to the clerk in final written form before the committee member introduces them. Please ensure the clerk has received your amendment by emailing it directly to Tina Penny and Elise Stewart. The first and only item on the agenda is the 2023 mid-year report. I'm going to now invite the Auditor General to introduce and present the item. Mike McDonnell, who's accompanied by Anna Matty, and did I say that right? Okay, who just joined the Office of the Auditor General yesterday as an administrative assistant. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee members. I'm pleased to present to you a mid-year check-in for my office. This isn't a report that's required under the Auditor General bylaw, but in consultation with committee members, midway through my office's first full year of operations, seemed a good time to provide a brief presentation on the progress we've made and the benefits achieved. I'll just wait for Elise to get the slides up, please. Great, if we go to the next one. Thank you. We achieved some significant milestones over the last 6 months. Our first audit report on building permit fees was released in January. It contained some positive findings, especially around processes. However, it also identified opportunities for improvement in how fees are calculated. Money was being left on the table. We also found that fees were not always calculated in compliance with the building bylaw. The report contained 5 recommendations for improvement. We released 2 more reports, office furniture purchases in February and permitting program cost recovery model in May. We had generally positive findings with respect to the purchases of office furnishings, albeit with opportunities to improve compliance with various trade agreements that were addressed in 5 recommendations. However, we identified significant deficiencies in the permitting program cost recovery model. While the intention was to fully recover costs, instead there were significant under-recoveries of fees and cross-subsidization between permit categories. A total of 8 recommendations were provided to management. In January, we also released the OAG's first annual report, as well as an updated audit and operational plan. Like any leading organization, we monitor our performance through a framework outlining why we're here and what we're trying to accomplish, which was presented to you in the office's 2023 operational plan. Since I've already presented this performance framework to you, I won't review it in detail. I just wanted to remind committee members of the framework since it's the basis for the rest of the presentation. Performance for each of the goals of the previous slide was measured with 1 or more key performance indicators, or KPIs. You'll see in the report a color associated with actual performance to date. Green means the performance target has been fulfilled or is on track to be by year end. Yellow means the performance target has or will be only partially met. And red means the performance target will not be met by year end. The blank 4th category signifies that performance has not yet been assessed at this interim stage. Performance will be measured for all KPIs in the office's 2023 annual report, which will be released early next year. Goal 1 was to establish an independent whistleblower function. In June of last year, Council approved a motion from this committee to assign responsibility for the city's whistleblower function to the Auditor General. A revised whistleblower policy has yet to be brought to Council for approval. Work on the redraft continues, with the city and my office developing mutually acceptable revisions to the policy, revisions to the Auditor General bylaw, and underlining procedures. So we have 2 KPIs here. My budget request for this year included funding for 2 investigators to staff the whistleblower function. That request was endorsed by this committee and approved by Council on January 17th. My working assumption is that responsibility for the whistleblower function will transition to my office on January 1st, 2024. However, I will not hire people for these positions until Council has actually approved a revised policy. The second KPI relates to the development of procedures for the intake, processing, investigation, and reporting of whistleblower activities. What this looks like will very much depend on what the revised whistleblower policy looks like. So I've set a completion date for Q4. My office has also placed a request for case management to IT for a case management system. However, we don't believe this will be addressed until next year. Goal 2 is to produce high quality work. This year, I plan to release 6 reports, 5 audit reports, plus a report following up on the status of audit recommendations, following the process requested by this committee. We've begun audit work with the Board of Parks and Recreation and with the Vancouver Police Department and expect both audits to be completed by the end of the year, so we're on track for KPI 2.1. The second KPI relates to external quality reviews by my practice regulator, the Chartered Professional Accountants of British Columbia. CPA BC conducted their first file inspection in March, looking not only at my audit files, but at the systems of quality control that are in place. I'm very pleased to report that the office passed the inspection with no exceptions. To be clear, I've been a member of CPA BC's Practice Review Committee, and passed with no exceptions is pretty high praise. In fact, it's as good as it gets in the world of practice review. Goal 3 is to provide the city departments with objective and helpful recommendations, as evidenced by 3 things: the proportion of recommendations accepted by audited departments, the proportion of audit recommendations endorsed by this committee, and the proportion of recommendations implemented over 3 years. At this time, I can report that all 18 of our audit recommendations have been accepted by the city, which has provided action plans in relation to each of them, and that this committee has endorsed all 18 recommendations as well. As for implementation, I'll begin reporting out on that once we've completed our first follow-up at the end of the year. The last goal is for our work to yield cost savings or enhanced revenues that at least match our operational costs over 5 years. For each audit, we've identified quantifiable and non-quantifiable benefits of our recommendations. Return on investment, or ROI, is calculated by summing the quantifiable impacts and comparing this to the cost to operate the office. Page 8 of the report in front of you shows in more detail how this was calculated. Factoring in all operating costs for my office since inception, our estimated ROI to date is exactly 200%. In other words, for every dollar invested in the OAG, the city stands to gain $2. I have to point out that this includes startup costs. ROI would be quite a bit higher if I were to exclude the costs associated just with getting the office up and running, so this figure should improve over time. It should be noted that not all audit recommendations will result in outcomes that can be measured, but that shouldn't be construed as meaning the work wasn't valuable. For instance, our audit report on office furniture purchases contained recommendations to improve the city's compliance with national and international trade agreements. Non-compliance could create serious legal liabilities for the city, but while it's important that the city avoid potential litigation and other costs related to non-compliance, I don't believe it's reasonable to report an economic benefit attributable to what may or have been avoided through improved compliance. So important work, but not reasonably quantifiable. I'd like to conclude this presentation by saying thank you. I've greatly appreciated the support provided to me in my office from Council. You entrusted me with the responsibility to establish a high-performing group that would contribute to improving the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness of city operations. And I hope the work that we've done today proves that this trust was well placed. We've only just begun. I'd also like to express my appreciation to city management and their teams who provided excellent cooperation for every project to date. Having an auditor looking over your shoulder, one who reports publicly on everything he finds, is new in Vancouver and can be stressful. I get that. We focused on developing positive, professional relationships with city staff, and I'm pleased that we're very quickly finding ways to work well and fulfilling our respective roles. And lastly, I want to thank my team for taking a chance on me in building this new enterprise. You've done good work that's already making a difference for Vancouver, and I can't wait to see what we can accomplish in the coming years. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mike. We do have questions, and so anybody who has a question for the Auditor General who hasn't already, please add yourself to the queue. We'll start with Councillor Montague.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the report, Mike. Just a quick question. You mentioned that you're working on an audit for the VPD and the Park Board as well. Was there a third one? Did I miss a third one there?
No, you didn't, Councillor Montague.
Okay.
There will be a report following up on the recommendations made for the 3 audit reports that have been released to date. So that would bring our total number of reports for the year up to 6.
Okay, and you said the VPD and Park Board you're expecting by the end of the year. Are we talking October or December?
We're talking December.
Okay, great. That's it. That's all my questions. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Boyle.
Thanks for this work, and I'll echo your thanks to the whole team. Really appreciate what you all do. I'm wondering if you can just give us a bit more information on the slide you had about the ROI to date being 200%. What can you give us a little more color of what those returns or savings have been?
Sure. If you flip to the last page of the report that I provided you, which I believe is on page 8, you'll see that for each of the 3 audits, we've identified what we believe the potential benefit to the city will be in the next 5 years over each year. So for the building permit fees, we believe that the city is very likely to bring our recommendations forward and close that revenue shortfall that we identified right away. And so that's a benefit that we should see this particular year. For the permit cost recovery model, it was a much larger gap, $12 million a year. And I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, whether you will want to increase fees to close that gap all in 1 year, or if that's something that you might do over a number of years. So for this, I've assumed that it's going to take 5 years to close that gap. So the benefit in any given year will increase over time as that gap is closed. And so we take that as an increased revenue as a benefit to the city. add up those benefits to the city and compare it to the cost to run the office over the same period. Well, actually, longer period because I started 22 months ago getting the office up and running, and a lot of that time was spent just building the thing.
Great. Appreciate you just saying in the public meeting, outlining some of what was there. Thanks. That's all.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Mike, for this amazing work. I think I met with everyone in the team. It's an amazing team doing a very amazing work. Thank you. Okay, question. So again, to follow up Councillor Boyle's question regarding 200%. So I guess the calculation is using the potential cost saving every year divided by the 3 years operating cost. So $4 million divided by $2 million, 200%. So it's actually 1 year divided by 3 years. So the potential benefit is actually higher if you consider year-to-year return of investment.
Well, if you look at the total potential benefit to the city over 5 years of the recommendations so far, it's just shy of $45 million. I don't want to claim that benefit yet because that would, I think, be a little bit cheeky on my part. So I'm just comparing it to the costs to date and what we anticipate potential benefit to the city in year one. And as the years go on, then we'll have a more and more reasonable basis of comparison. My startup costs will be out of the equation. We'll have a number of audits with staggered benefits to the city, either through enhanced revenues or cost efficiencies or cost avoidance. And we'll compare that to the costs as we go on. The goal is that we at least break even. I don't know if that's reasonable or not. There's not an awful lot of audit offices that produce this information. The one that stands out that really does is Toronto. And Toronto estimates that their Office of the Auditor General provides benefits to the city each year that are between 7 to 12. So every dollar invested in the office results in a benefit to the city of somewhere between $7 and $12.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's something that we would certainly aim for, but this is new. We're just getting started, so you'll forgive me for taking a somewhat conservative approach and saying we at least pay for ourselves.
That's great. Yeah, thanks, Mike. So $45 million in 5 years, that's very significant. So how can we, as a council, to push the city to implement those recommendations?
Well, that's part of the follow-up process. So the follow-up process that this committee is actually this committee's responsibility to follow up on the recommendations.
Okay.
But this committee's asked me to run with that, which I think makes perfectly good sense. And every year we'll be asking city departments to provide us with an update on the status of the implementation of the recommendations. They're in relation to the action plans that they provided in relation to each recommendation. So we'll be monitoring that and reporting it back to you, and you'll have an opportunity to ask city management where things are at.
Great. Okay, one more last question. So I guess it's a very general question. If we saw a particular areas we'd like you to look at, we can send this input to your.
I always value suggestions.
Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Joe. I've put myself on the queue, and I'm hoping I can pass the mic to Vice Chair Boyle to. All right. Thanks for this, Mike. And I just wanted to jump on the whistleblower report and just kind of gauge how confident you are that we are on track to have a new whistleblower sort of office component by the new year, and maybe add a little color to what the whistleblower function is gonna affect and look like.
Sure. Well, I'll start with just the second part of that question, what it's going to look like. We're trying to model this on other well-functioning whistleblower programs that operate in Toronto and in Ottawa. They have good programs there, good processes, and we are working with those offices to learn from them and copy their success. In terms of revising the policy, there's 3 components to it. One is the actual policy itself, and that is, I think we've come to a point where we have agreement on wording between my office and the city. But there's 2 other components. There's underlying procedures that are referred to in the policy that the city is drafting, and I've not yet seen, so I don't know what that will look like. I'm hoping to see it sometime soon. There's also consequential amendments to the Auditor General bylaw that are necessary. The Auditor General bylaw references the whistleblower policy 3 times, and the references don't actually make sense in the context of a revised policy, so it needs to be adjusted accordingly. So I've had a legal advisor provide suggestions to the city for what that might look like, and have not yet heard back. So those three components need to be put in place. And then the revised policy and the changes to the Auditor General bylaw have to be brought forward to council for approval. I was hopeful that that might have happened this month, but I don't think that's going to at this juncture. Council, of course, is on break in August, so keeping my fingers crossed that this comes forward September, October. But you'll have to ask the city for a more definitive answer on
Yeah,
that.
and we can follow up on that a bit. Okay, that was it for me. Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Vice Chair Boyle. And seeing no further questions or anybody on the queue, to Carol and Archie visually, nope, looks good. Okay, then this item was for information only and doesn't require a vote. And this actually concludes the one and only item on the agenda. So with that, can we get a motion to adjourn? Councillor Joe, seconded by Councillor Boyle. All in favor, say yay. All opposed, say nay. This motion carries unanimously. Thanks, everyone. The meeting is adjourned. Our next scheduled Auditor General Committee meeting is on October 5th, 2023 at 9 a.m. Thanks all.